It was a crisp golden morning when the mighty Sultan of Dubai set sail on a grand voyage across the sea. The sun beamed down from a flawless sky, painting it in soft hues of blue, while the sea stretched out like a vast, peaceful expanse, calm as a sleeping giant. His courtiers, eager for the adventure, filled the deck with laughter and excitement. Everyone was in high spirits, except for one. Zion, a nobleman of high status, stood among them, but his face was not one of joy. He was a man who had never set foot on a ship before, and as the land slowly disappeared from sight and the waves began to grow taller, a visible panic took over him. His face turned pale, his hands began to tremble, and then, without warning, he screamed. "We're all going to die!" Zion shrieked, clutching the wooden deck with desperate hands. "We'll perish out here!" His cries echoed across the ship, wild and uncontrollable. His fear was so intense that not even the Sultan's kind reassurances, nor the gentle arms of his courtiers could calm him. For 2 days and nights, Zion's terror continued to grip him like a vice. He refused to eat, unable to sleep, his body shaking with fear. The crew, exhausted and frustrated, were on edge. Even the Sultan, who had once been filled with excitement for the adventure, now found himself lost in thought, troubled by the growing unrest. Should they turn back, he wondered? Was the joy of the journey worth the torment of his courtier? Just as hope seemed lost, an elderly man, quiet and humble, approached the Sultan. Idris, a scholar who had joined the voyage as an observer, bowed respectfully. "Your Highness," he said, "if you grant me permission to act in my own way, without interference or questioning, I can bring this misery to an end." The Sultan, desperate and filled with both hope and desperation, nodded. "Do what you must, and if you succeed, I shall reward you beyond measure." Idris gave a small, knowing smile and walked calmly to the edge of the ship. He turned to the crew and spoke with authority. "Throw him into the sea," he said without hesitation. The crew froze, unsure if they had heard him correctly. Was this some sort of joke? But Idris stood firm, his voice unshakable. "It is the Sultan's order," he added. "You have my word. Trust me." Reluctantly, the crew took hold of Zion, who screamed even louder as they dragged him to the side of the ship. Then, with a final cry, they tossed him into the cold, dark waters below. The sea swallowed him in an instant. Moments passed. Then Zion resurfaced, gasping and flailing, screaming louder than before. He sank again, and his terror was now tangible, his fight for survival real. Panic turned to pure desperation as he struggled to keep afloat. Idris remained calm, watching from the deck. He shouted, "Pull him up!" The crew scrambled to drag Zion back on board. He was soaked, trembling, but alive. And something had changed. The man who had screamed at the slightest sway of the ship now lay there quietly, his face pressed against the deck, as though it were his only salvation. "Thank God. Solid wood," he muttered, still shaking but no longer crying out in fear. From that moment on, Zion was a different man. He ate, he slept, and even smiled. The sea had not changed, but his fear had. His terror had been replaced with a newfound sense of calm and gratitude. The rest of the journey was peaceful, filled with laughter and warmth under the golden sun. When the ship finally returned to port, the Sultan found Idris once more, his curiosity piqued. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice filled with awe. "How did you know that throwing him into the sea would bring him peace?" Idris gazed out at the ocean, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Because," he began, "I once did the same with my heart." The Sultan waited in silence as Idris continued. "Years ago, I loved my wife deeply, but I was crippled by fear of losing her. I clung to her, suffocating her with anxiety, with doubts, with constant questioning. Eventually, she left, and in that silence, I realized the true weight of my fear. It was like drowning. He paused, the memories haunting him. But it was only when I was alone, only when I faced that emptiness, that I understood how precious her presence had been. I promised to change, and by God's grace, she returned. The Sultan nodded, now understanding the depth of Idris's words. Some fears, Idris continued softly, can only be understood when we truly face them. And so it was with Zion. He had never understood the safety of the ship until he had tasted the terror of the sea. Fear, often exaggerated in our minds, grows stronger when we avoid confronting it. But when we face it head-on, we begin to see its true size. Yes, it may shake us at first, but it also teaches us resilience, appreciation, and strength. Just as Zion learned to appreciate the ship's safety after being thrown into the vast, terrifying sea, we too learn to value the stability in our lives only after confronting the instability. Sometimes, life throws us into deep waters, not to drown us, but to teach us how to swim. And in doing so, we discover strength we never knew we had.